Adrienne's thumb rested on the strip of black tape around my red rescue beacon. That tape was the only part of Voss Summit's emergency system nobody had tried to replace before opening day. The beacon had survived 12 winters and still carried my call sign in chipped white paint. N7. Adrienne unhooked it from my harness in front of 40 employees, 6 board members, and enough cameras to turn a safety briefing into a verdict. "You left the clearance unsigned," she said, because the north cornice moved 11 centimeters after midnight. Behind her, the glass wall of Summit Command framed a mountain arranged for investors. Fresh snow softened the service roads. Gold banners marked the new gondola terminal. Staff guided invited guests toward the viewing terraces. The warning wall beside Adrienne showed 12 green sectors. My handwritten snow card showed 3 reasons those lights were lying. Mason Cole stood at her right shoulder in a new rescue jacket with no wear at the cuffs. Adrienne's former fiancé had returned 6 weeks earlier as the board's emergency systems director. He had arrived with a software vendor, a lender's deadline, and camera-ready comm. "The network cleared the cornice at 7:42, Mason said. "The network also lost wind data for 19 minutes. It interpolated. Snow doesn't." One of the camera operators shifted to catch Adrienne's face. She noticed. She always noticed. "Nolan," she said quietly, "we discussed this in private. The mountain stayed public." That landed harder than I intended. Her jaw tightened, not because I had embarrassed her, but because I had done it where she could not answer as my fiancé without weakening herself as chief executive. That was the trap we had built together and kept calling professionalism. Corbin Voss rose from the board table. Adrienne's uncle wore a charcoal overcoat indoors and held his opening credential between 2 fingers. "The financing covenant requires public operation by 9, he said. "Are you alleging immediate danger, Mr. Pierce?" "I'm saying we dig another pit, inspect the lower anchors, and delay until noon." "That is not the question. It's the answer people survive." Mason glanced at the cameras, then at the beacon under Adrienne's hand. "I'm prepared to assume incident command." Of course he was. Adrienne looked at me once more. There was a question in her eyes she would not ask in front of the room. "Are you certain enough to cost us everything?" I could not give her certainty. Nobody honest could. "I won't sign green on unstable snow," I said. Her fingers closed around N7. "Then you're relieved of incident command pending review." The room went still as a private fracture became company property. Adrienne turned and clipped my beacon to Mason's chest. "Emergency lead is now Mason Cole. Call sign North 7. Mason's hand covered the beacon. For 1 second, the black tape disappeared beneath his glove. I heard a sound under the floor. Not thunder. Thunder arrives from somewhere else. This came up through my boots. A deep, hollow whoomph moved through the building, followed by a sharp metallic rattle from the gondola towers outside. Every green sector on the warning wall vanished at once. The cameras kept recording. Across the glass, a white line opened beneath the north cornice. "Down," I said. The line widened. Snow folded over itself and came off the ridge in one solid plate. People on the viewing terrace turned too late to understand what they were seeing. The first slide struck the upper service road, lifted a parked snowcat sideways, and swallowed the orange safety fence. The command deck shuddered. Lights blinked out, returned red, then died completely. Someone screamed behind me. My radio came alive with my own call sign. "North 7 to all units," Mason said from 3 feet away, voice already too fast. "Hold current positions. Await grid recovery." "Do not hold," I said. "Terrace team move inside. Lower crews get away from drainage lines." Mason rounded on me. "You are not command." Another impact rolled up from below. The glass bowed in its frame. Adrienne stepped between us. "Which drainage lines?" 3 and 4. The first slab crossed the upper road. If it loads the creek chute, it runs straight at the service tunnels. "The model routes secondary flow east," Mason said. "The model thinks the wind came from the west all night." The emergency desk switched to battery power. One channel broke through the static. "Tunnel 4 to command. We lost the outer door." The voice belonged to Eli Grant, the lift electrician. I could hear machinery behind him and people coughing. "We have 9 in shelter. Ventilation just stopped." Mason grabbed the desk microphone. "Tunnel 4 remains sealed. Response is routing from lower station." I pulled the paper contour map from my field pack and spread it over the dead touchscreen. Lower station can't reach them. The access road crosses the creek chute twice. Your map is 4 years old. The mountain is older. Tessa Ward was already beside me, fastening her medic pack. She looked from my map to the blank wall. Please tell me your romantic disagreement includes a breathable route. Old snowmaking trench, west of the maintenance sheds. That route was closed to vehicles. Naturally, Adrienne reached for my wrist. She stopped before touching me. If you go outside without command authorization, 9 people have maybe 40 minutes of clean air. I know the number. Then don't make this about authorization. Pain crossed her face, quick and controlled. You think that's what I'm doing? I looked at the red beacon on Mason's chest. I think you already did it. Corbin moved to Adrienne's side. The guest terraces remain our first liability. Secure the public areas before committing teams to staff infrastructure. Tessa gave him a flat look. Good thing suffocation respects investor categories. Adrienne did not rebuke her. That mattered. Outside, staff pushed guests through the interior doors. A woman had lost one boot and still held a champagne glass. 2 attendants carried an older man. Above them, the ridge disappeared inside blowing snow. The radio cracked again. Tunnel 4, we smell fuel. Eli's voice was quieter now. I folded the contour map and put it inside my jacket. Mason blocked the exit. If you cross the closure line, I'll have security stop you. Security is moving guests. Then I'll stop you. Tessa looked at his spotless jacket. With which hands? He ignored her. Nolan, if you were wrong about the trench, you pull responders away from the terraces and make this worse. That was the first useful thing he had said. He was right about the cost. I checked the wind through the vibrating seam of the west door. Fine snow pushed inward, dry and fast. The second fracture had not released yet. It would. Send no one after us, I said. Give us 20 minutes. If we don't call, keep your teams inside the hard structures. You don't have a beacon. I noticed. Adrienne took one step toward Mason. Give it back. Corbin said her name as a warning. Mason's hand stayed over N7. Changing command again in front of the press will create chaos. The Avalanche handled that, I said. The building shook a third time, smaller but closer. Adrienne looked at the employees crowded behind the cameras, then at the dead warning wall. She had spent 5 years making Voss Summit appear certain enough to save. Now certainty had gone dark in 12 neat rectangles. She did not give me the beacon. She opened the west door. 20 minutes, she said. Then I send whoever I have. It was not trust, not yet, but it was the first decision she made that morning, without looking at a green light. Tessa and I stepped into the snow. Behind us, my radio call sign sounded again from Mason's chest. Ahead of us, somewhere beneath the white slope, 9 people were waiting for a voice that belonged to the man wearing it. The first 100 meters told me the slide had not finished deciding what it wanted. Snow dust hung above the service road like smoke. Beneath it, the surface settled in small, dry cracks that ran ahead of our boots. Tessa followed my track exactly, which was her version of trust. She complained while doing it, which was her version of affection. 20 minutes, she said. Very generous of management. You can use mine too. I plan to. Yours look poorly supervised. We crossed behind the maintenance sheds and dropped into the old snowmaking trench. Concrete walls rose to our shoulders. The trench had been built before the resort buried every useful route beneath decorative timber and guest signage. My handheld radio received more static than speech. North 7 to field teams, Mason said through it. Secondary flow remains east. Lower unit proceed by Creek Road. Tessa stopped walking. He just sent them into the chute. I keyed the radio. Lower unit hold at Pump House 2. Creek Road is not clear. Mason answered immediately. Unauthorized traffic. Lower unit continue assigned route. There were moments when losing your job simplified things. Pump House 2, I said. Look uphill before you move. Silence. Then a driver I recognized said, we have cracking above the second crossing. Holding. The slope released 30 seconds later. We could not see it from the trench. We heard trees snap, then the long grinding surge of snow and debris crossing the road where the lower rescue vehicle would have been. Tessa looked at me. I dislike being right with you. It encourages you. The radio stayed silent long enough to become an accusation. Adrienne broke it. All units, Creek Road is closed. Nolan's field routing takes priority until the grid returns. Corbin's voice came over an open command microphone. Adrienne, the terraces. Terrace evacuation is inside hard cover. Tunnel 4 has failed ventilation. Workers first. She said it once. No apology, no explanation. That was how Adrienne made decisions when she finally stopped negotiating with herself. Tessa resumed walking. Was that romantic? 9 people are breathing fuel. So yes for you too. The trench ended at a steel grate buried beneath wind-packed snow. I cleared the latch with my shovel while Tessa checked the slope above us. We emerged behind the lower maintenance building, where the slide had peeled siding from one wall and wrapped a section of orange fence around a utility pole. The outer entrance to Tunnel 4 was gone. In its place sat a compressed wall of snow, shattered timber, and part of a service cart. A thin exhaust pipe stuck out near the top. No air moved through it. I pressed my radio close to the debris. "Eli, can you hear me?" Static, then 3 knocks from somewhere behind the wall. "We're at the outer door," I said. "How many mobile?" 7. Ruth hurt her leg. Ben's getting confused. "Fuel source." Backup generator tipped. We shut it down, but the smell's worse. Tessa pulled a compact gas meter from her pack and fed its tube through a gap. The reading climbed. "Carbon monoxide," she said. "They don't have 40 minutes. The obvious approach was also the one most likely to bury them. Digging the outer door would remove support from the debris plug, while the slope above remained loaded. I studied the old map inside my jacket. Tunnel 4 had once connected to a ventilation gallery before the expansion sealed it behind the laundry building. "There's a west vent," I said. Eli coughed over the radio. "Concrete cap. Renovation 2 years ago. Not the new cap, the original shaft. That's under the compressor pad." Tessa looked toward the laundry building. Between us and it, snow had settled into a smooth white apron with no trees showing through. Smooth is not the same as safe. Sometimes it means the slope has hidden every warning. I took out my probe and stepped once onto the apron. The pole dropped through a hard crust into loose grains below. I felt the failure before I saw it. A soft collapse traveled under my left boot. "Back." Tessa moved without asking. We retreated into the shadow of the maintenance wall as a fracture line raced across the apron. The top layer shifted 10 centimeters and stopped against the building. On the command channel, Mason said, "Field team, grid shows no movement at your location." I stared at the fresh crack beside my boot. "Your grid needs glasses. I have green telemetry across Lower West." Then somebody painted over the truth. A pulse sounded from my radio. 3 quick tones, a pause, then 1. I knew that pattern. N7 recorded pressure changes locally whenever the network dropped. The beacon was sending a stored alert through Mason's open microphone. 3 quick 1. Rapid pressure fall followed by impact. "Mason, when did that alert register?" "What alert?" The tones sounded again. Adrienne came onto the channel. "I hear it." "N7's local sensor," I said. "Check its log. The beacon shows a pressure event at 7:31. Mason answered after a pause. 7:31. 11 minutes before the network cleared the cornice. "Was that event on the command wall?" Adrienne asked. No one answered. Corbin said, "This is not the time for a data inquiry." "It became the time when the mountain moved," she said. I left them with the silence and studied the crack across the apron. It had exposed a darker band beneath the crust. The weak layer was shallow here. We could not cross on top, but the maintenance wall continued halfway toward the laundry building. Its roofline offered anchored cover. "We climbed the wall braces," I told Tessa. She looked at the bent metal supports. "Your plans are becoming less architectural, still better than Mason's road." We clipped short lines to the braces and moved sideways above the loaded apron. Halfway across, a gust struck the building hard enough to fill the air with ice. My injured left shoulder, an old dislocation, badly timed in every season, pulled against the rope. Tessa noticed. "You're favoring it." "I'm conserving elegance." "You started with very little." At the laundry building, we dropped behind the compressor pad. The original vent shaft was where the map promised, hidden beneath a removable steel plate and 6 centimeters of ice. We broke the seal with a pry bar. Warm poison air rushed out. Tessa lowered an oxygen line into the darkness while I widened the opening. The gas meter began to fall. Inside the tunnel, someone cried. Someone else laughed once, the thin sound of a person who had been trying not to panic. "Air's coming," I told Eli. "Stay low, keep everyone awake." The answer came as 9 uneven knocks against the pipe. Not a rescue yet, just proof that 9 people had heard us and were spending strength to answer. Adrienne's voice reached me again. "Nolan, guest evacuation is complete. I'm sending 2 responders to your trench route. Hold them at the maintenance sheds. This apron won't carry a team." Understood. That word used to mean she trusted my judgment. Lately, it had meant only that she had heard me. This time, I could not tell which. Mason spoke more quietly. "The beacon log has another anomaly." "Say it." The local clock recorded 4 alerts before 7:42. The network archive shows none. Tessa met my eyes across the open vent. The dashboard had not failed when the avalanche hit. It had failed before Adrienne took my beacon, and someone had made 12 warning sectors green, while the mountain was already trying to say no. We kept oxygen moving through the old vent, while the mountain and the company argued over which one would fail first. Tessa rigged the line to the steel plate and sent simple instructions down to Eli. "Move everyone beneath the shaft, keep Ruth's injured leg splinted, rotate the oxygen mask, report names every 5 minutes." The tunnel crew answered in order. Ben needed prompting twice. "They're stable for now," Tessa said. "That phrase expires quickly." I marked the vent location on my paper map and radioed the responders waiting at the maintenance sheds. They could carry cylinders along the wall route one at a time. Extraction would require opening the old ventilation gallery from the uphill side, which meant crossing terrain the digital map had just declared harmless. Mason arrived 12 minutes later with 2 responders, an N7 still clipped to his jacket. His camera-ready comm had not survived the walk. Snow covered one side of his face. A tear in his sleeve showed where he had caught a brace. "Lower station is cut off," he said. "The Creek Road vehicle is intact, but it can't move." Because the driver looked uphill. He accepted that without defending himself. Tessa pointed to my beacon. "You brought his name. Did you bring the log?" Mason removed N7 and held it out. I did not take it. "Read the event times," I said. He looked at the small local display. 6:58, 7:12, 7:31, 7:38. Severity: increasing pressure fall, and 2 impact signatures. Network archive: nothing before the release. Tessa crouched beside the oxygen line. Systems do not usually become optimistic by themselves. Mason glanced toward the responders. The warning thresholds were recalibrated yesterday. There it was. Not the whole truth, but the first piece he had chosen to give rather than defend. By whom? The vendor applied a seasonal profile. Under whose approval? His silence answered before he did. Adrienne's emergency credential. The cold found a place beneath my ribs that had nothing to do with weather. I keyed the command channel. "Adrienne, did you authorize a threshold change?" Static moved between us. "I authorized Corbin to resolve vendor readiness items," she said, "not to suppress field alerts." That was not my question. I gave him an emergency token. The sentence sounded small against the mountain. It was not. For 3 months, Adrienne had insisted no expansion decision bypassed her. She had made that claim to lenders, employees, and me. Now the first person she had trusted with a shortcut was the man whose signature protected the opening covenant. Mason stepped closer to the radio. I knew the profile changed. I reviewed the summary. It raised the trigger threshold 4%. 4% on which layer? I asked. Surface instability. The layer that just crossed 2 roads. I thought the raw feed stayed visible. Did you check? He looked down at the red beacon. No. Adrienne said. Mason returned to command. Corbin cut onto the channel. No one returns anywhere until the guest transfer is complete. We are managing an active emergency, not conducting depositions. We can do both, Adrienne said. The lender is on the emergency line. If you declare a full resort closure without verified system fault, the expansion note accelerates today. 9 employees are breathing through a tube. because our verified system called this slope green, and hundreds more lose their jobs if the company defaults. That was why Corbin remained dangerous. He never offered an obviously evil choice. He offered one group of workers as payment for another and called the arithmetic responsible. I looked at the tunnel entrance buried beneath the slide. Adrienne, ask him for the raw alert queue. Corbin, release it. The vendor retains raw telemetry. Then authorize release. Legal needs to review. Use the emergency token. No one spoke. Tessa raised one eyebrow. That traveled well. Adrienne's next words were for the whole resort. All units, Voss Summit is closed. This is a full evacuation and rescue operation. Opening credentials are void. Guest media access ends now. Corbin's voice sharpened. You do not have board approval. I have incident authority. Mason has incident authority. You assigned it yourself. The beacon sat in Mason's hand between us. He stared at it for a long second, then pressed his transmitter. Command, this is North 7. I support full closure. It was the first honest use he made of my call sign. Adrienne continued. I'm also transferring emergency oversight to a joint field group effective now. Tessa Ward holds medical priority. Nolan Pierce holds terrain routing. Mason Cole holds communications until the network is isolated. No single executive may override them. Corbin said, you just triggered the default. Then tell the lender why. The channel went quiet. I had wanted Adrienne to choose lives over the opening. She had. The satisfaction I expected never came. Choices do not erase the need for them. Mason handed me N7 again. This time I took it. The casing was warm from his body. My call sign looked more damaged than it had an hour earlier, though that was probably anger doing cosmetic work. I opened the voice log. The beacon had captured fragments whenever its pressure sensor triggered. At 7:12, wind scraped Mason's briefing microphone while someone spoke near him. Corbin's voice. If Pierce refuses the card, Cole assumes command. Keep the raw panel off the presentation feed. Then Mason, the field panel too. The summary is sufficient. The recording ended in static. Mason closed his eyes. I thought he meant the press display. You did not ask. No. Adrienne heard the exchange over my open radio. When she spoke, her voice had changed. It was still controlled. Adrienne did not lose control in public, but certainty had left it. Send me the file. Local transfer only, I said. The network is not clean. Then bring it to Relay 3. I'm isolating the warning system there. I looked uphill. Relay 3 stood beneath the old Avalanche control bunker, 200 meters above the maintenance sheds. The route also led to the sealed ventilation gallery. Why are you going there? Because the automated stabilization sequence still shows armed. My attention snapped to the ridge. Controlled charges had been set before dawn to release small slabs above empty terrain. Under normal conditions, the sequence would have disarmed when the opening began. With the network damaged, a stored command might still fire at 9:30. It was 9:18. Adrienne, do not touch that relay alone. You have a tunnel to open. And you have technicians. They're trapped in it. That was Adrienne's dry humor arriving at the least helpful moment. It almost made me smile. Almost. Take a responder, I said. There isn't one closer than you. Then wait. You told me 9 people have minutes. I also told you the relay sits under a loaded ridge. For a moment, neither of us sounded like command. We sounded like two people who had chosen a wedding month, but never decided what happened when love and authority gave opposite instructions. I'm not asking permission, she said. That has been our problem all morning. Her breath caught softly over the radio. I know, she said. I'm telling you where I'll be. It was not enough to repair anything. It was different enough to matter. Tessa checked her watch. Ben missed his last name call. Above us, a dull mechanical siren began to pulse through the snow. The mountain control system was counting down to a blast designed for conditions that no longer existed. Adrienne had closed the resort and broken the financing covenant. Now she had 12 minutes to stop her own machinery from dropping the rest of the ridge on everyone still underneath it. The siren counted in 10-second pulses. It had never been designed to sound frightening. It was a polite electronic tone meant to tell trained staff that controlled charges were about to make the mountain safer. Context did the frightening for it. "Mason, can you cancel remotely?" I asked. "The command is queued inside Relay 3. Network isolation locked me out." "Manual firing key," Adrienne answered while moving. Wind cut across her microphone. "In the relay cabinet. Turn it to safe and remove it. Do not just leave it in safe." "I know how a key works." Tessa was feeding another oxygen cylinder into the vent. "Excellent. Everyone is relaxed now." The responders at the maintenance sheds began moving cylinders along our brace route. Mason stayed beside the laundry wall with a portable communications pack, tying scattered radio channels into one local loop. His competence was inconvenient. It would have been easier to hate him if he had been useless. I clipped N7 back to my harness. The weight settled against my chest where it belonged. I did not feel restored. A call sign is not authority if the people around it have stopped believing the voice. "Tunnel 4, I said. "We're opening the uphill ventilation gallery. Eli, can your group move once we breach?" 7 can. "Ruth needs a carry. Ben's not answering questions." Tessa closed her eyes for 1 second. "We need the main gallery, not just air." The uphill entrance lay beyond the old compressor pad and beneath the Avalanche control bunker. It was reachable by a narrow service spine anchored to rock. The digital system marked it red now, which would have been reassuring if the same system had not spent the morning lying in green. Mason unfolded a newer site plan beside mine. "The expansion crew sealed the original gallery here," he said, pointing below the relay station. "But they left a utility crawlspace around the cap." "How wide?" 60 centimeters. Tessa looked at my shoulders. "You have finally found a route too narrow for your judgment. Equipment first, people after we open the cap." The siren pulsed again. 9 minutes. Corbin came over the emergency channel from the command deck. "Adrienne, leave Relay 3. The board has reached the lender. They will suspend acceleration if we preserve the main lodge and gondola terminal. The blast threatens Tunnel 4. The charge field is designed to move snow away from the guest infrastructure. Toward the service basin," I said. "Mr. Pierce, you are no longer part of this corporate conversation." "Snow keeps inviting me." Corbin ignored that. "If we lose the lodge, there will be no company left to govern safely tomorrow." Adrienne's breathing filled the channel as she climbed. "How many people are in the lodge?" she asked. "It is empty." "How many in Tunnel 4? He did not answer. 9, she said. "The company can explain the building. Your father built it. Then he knew it was made of wood." The channel closed from her end. Mason stared at the radio. She never spoke to Corbin that way before. "You were engaged to her. Surely you disappointed her at least once." "Frequently, she was more formal." That almost pulled a laugh from Tessa. She settled for shaking her head. We started uphill. The service spine was not a path so much as a steel handrail attached to a cliff. Snow filled the steps between exposed bolts. We moved clipped to the anchor cable, testing each foothold before shifting weight. Mason carried the communications pack. Tessa carried enough oxygen to make balance theoretical. Halfway up, N7 vibrated against my chest. The local pressure graph dropped. "Stop." All 3 of us froze. A crack opened above the maintenance sheds, then halted at a cluster of rock anchors. The weak layer was propagating around us. We had time measured in choices, not minutes. "Adrienne status." No answer. "Relay 3 status." "Static." Mason boosted the local loop. "Her signal is inside the bunker shadow." The siren pulsed twice more, then stopped. Silence spread over the mountain. 5 seconds later, Adrienne came back. "Key removed." I let air out of my lungs. "Bring it down." The cabinet rearmed when I opened the outer relay. Mason's face changed. "That's impossible. Not if the stored sequence has a secondary controller," I said. He opened the system diagram on his pack. Corbin's vendor installed a fail operational bridge for the grand opening. "A what?" Tessa asked. "A second firing route. If the primary network fails, the charges can still execute, because nothing says safety like refusing to stop." Adrienne said, "There's a physical bus below the relay cabinet. I can pull it." Mason zoomed the diagram. "The bus carries the bunker heaters and emergency radio too. If I pull it, do the charges die?" "Yes." "Then they die." Corbin broke onto the line. Adrienne, if you destroy that controller, the insurer will classify this as executive interference. Good, spell my name correctly. Metal struck metal over her microphone. The relay lights visible above us went dark. The firing sequence died with them. So did Adrienne's radio. Mason called her 3 times. Nothing returned. She has no bunker heat, he said. No hardline alarm. No radio unless she clears the shadow. The shortest route to Adrienne crossed directly beneath the loaded cornice. The other route reached the utility crawlspace and tunnel 4 first. I could see both choices from the service spine. One led to the woman I loved. The other led to 9 people she had just sacrificed her company to protect. Tessa watched me do the arithmetic. Say it, she said. I hated her for knowing I needed to. We opened the gallery. Mason looked uphill. I can reach Adrienne alone. No, you keep the local loop alive and guide her out if she transmits. Nobody crosses the cornice runout. She may be injured, and 9 people are running out of air. The words hurt because they sounded like Corbin's arithmetic. The difference was not that one life mattered less. The difference was that Adrienne still had a bunker, a key, and a choice. The tunnel crew had a steel door under 20 tons of snow. Mason lowered his voice. For what it's worth, she did not bring me back because she wanted me. I know, she brought me back because Corbin promised a system that would never force her to rely on one person's judgment. That worked beautifully. His mouth tightened. I helped sell it. It was not an apology designed to win anything. That made it more useful. Then help us survive it, I said. He moved the communications pack higher on his shoulder and followed without another defense. We reached the utility crawlspace as another collapse rolled beneath us. The steel spine jerked. My left anchor held. The right one tore out of the rock. I caught the rail with my bad shoulder. Pain flashed white down my arm. Tessa seized my harness, and Mason locked his line around the remaining bolt. Below us, the snow apron broke free. It rushed past the maintenance sheds and struck the outer wall of Tunnel 4. The vent pipe vanished. Our oxygen line snapped tight, then disappeared into the slide. Tessa looked at the severed hose. They have what's left in the tunnel. N7 emitted 1 weak pulse. From the dead relay above, a second pulse answered. Adrienne had switched her personal locator to analog. She was alive. For the moment, so were the 9 people below us. I forced my injured arm against my body and looked into the crawlspace. Open the gallery, I said. Then the mountains settled over both routes and took away the possibility of changing my mind. The utility crawlspace was 60 centimeters wide if nobody breathed. Tessa went first because she had 2 functioning shoulders and no respect for ceremony. I pushed the equipment bag ahead with my right hand while my left arm stayed strapped against my chest. Mason remained at the opening, relaying our position and listening for Adrienne's analog pulse. The crawlspace bent around the concrete cap and ended above the original ventilation gallery. Expansion crews had filled the upper half with foam blocks, then bolted a steel plate across what remained. I found their definition of sealed, Tessa said. Is it expensive? Mostly lazy. We cut the first bolts with a compact saw. Vibration traveled through the plate and returned from the tunnel as a low metallic hum. N7 recorded each impact on its local sensor. The same independence that had exposed the missing alerts now gave us a crude picture of the void below. 3 bolts remained when Eli's voice returned, thin with static. Nolan, Ben stopped breathing. Tessa took the radio. Start compressions. Mask sealed tight. Ruth can count rhythm if she's conscious. She's conscious. Then make her useful. The tunnel filled with muffled counting. I set the saw against the next bolt. My shoulder shook hard enough to move the blade. Tessa put her hand over mine. You can be injured after we open it. That was my schedule. She braced the tool while I drove it through. The plate shifted inward on the final cut. Poisoned air pushed through the gap. We covered our masks and widened the opening until Tessa could slide feet first into the gallery. Her light disappeared below. Floor holds, she called. Send the oxygen. I lowered the cylinders, then followed with one arm and no dignity. The gallery descended through old concrete toward Tunnel 4. Water ran beneath a rusted cable tray. Each step brought the gas reading higher. At the bottom, a maintenance door leaned inward under debris. Voices came from the other side. We pried it open enough for air and light. Eli was kneeling over Ben. Ruth sat against the wall with her leg bound between 2 aluminum braces. 6 others crowded beneath the shaft, faces gray with cold and exhaust. Tessa took over compressions, Nolan ventilation, Eli mask, everyone else stopped watching and move. Orders gave frightened people something better than hope. They gave them work. I found the manual damper above the generator bay and forced it open. The old gallery began drawing air uphill. Ben coughed beneath the mask, weakly at first, then with enough violence to offend Tessa. "Good," she said. "Keep doing that." N7 pulsed against my chest. Not my signal. Adrienne's locator answered from above at uneven intervals. Mason's voice came through. Her pulse moved 20 meters east, then stopped. "Bunker exit. The east catwalk. It crosses the relay trench." I pictured the slope. The second slide had taken the lower apron, but the ridge above the catwalk remained loaded. "She's trying to clear the radio shadow," I said. "Or she fell." The tunnel crew could not climb the crawlspace. The only viable exit was the old ventilation gallery, which continued north to a service portal near the relay trench. That route would bring us closer to Adrienne, but it also passed beneath the damaged control bunker. Tessa assessed Ruth and Ben. "We can move." Slowly. We built a carry seat from rescue webbing and put Ruth between two mechanics. Ben walked between Eli and another worker with oxygen at his face. I took point, following the old gallery on my paper map. The digital site plan showed the passage ending at a concrete wall. The paper showed a drainage door. For once, age had kept better records than progress. We reached the door after 20 minutes. Snow pressed through its lower seam, but the frame remained square. I switched N7 to analog homing. Adrienne's pulse appeared as a faint direction tone through the wall. "Close. Too close to leave." Mason joined us from the upper crawlspace and took Ruth's carry line without being asked. His face was cut near one eyebrow. "Field group is waiting beyond the portal," he said. "Corbin ordered them to the lodge twice. They refused twice. People improve in emergencies. Some of us slowly." We forced the drainage door outward. The portal opened into a narrow rock pocket beneath the relay station. Rescue lights flashed through blowing snow 50 meters below. Between us and them lay a short exposed traverse. Adrienne was on the east catwalk above it. She had one arm wrapped around a broken railing and the firing key clenched in her bare hand. Blood marked her temple. The catwalk's outer support had folded, leaving her above the runout. When she saw us, relief crossed her face and disappeared into anger. "Why are you still here?" she shouted. I looked at the 9 people emerging behind me. "Busy." The ridge cracked. N7 screamed a local pressure warning. Snow lifted above the bunker in a white sheet. "Move." The field responders pulled the tunnel crew across the traverse. Mason and Eli carried Ruth. Tessa kept Ben moving. I climbed toward the catwalk. Adrienne shook her head. "Nolan, no. You removed your firing key. I'm conducting a review." Even then, her mouth almost moved. The slide struck the uphill side of the relay station. Steel groaned. I clipped my line to the inner rail and reached Adrienne as the outer catwalk dropped another half-meter. My left shoulder failed when I pulled her up. Pain emptied the world. My grip opened. Adrienne caught my harness with both hands. For one suspended second, she held me instead. Mason reached the lower anchor and threw a second line. Together, they brought me against the rock while the slide passed beneath us and buried the ceremonial route to the lodge. The building Corbin wanted to save vanished behind a wall of snow and timber. Every person from Tunnel 4 reached the rescue pocket. Eli counted his crew twice, touching each shoulder as he named them. 9 people answered. That simple roll call carried more weight than every opening speech waiting unused inside the lodge. No one cheered. Tessa was treating Ben. Ruth was crying without sound. Mason sat in the snow holding the end of my line as if he had forgotten how to release it. Adrienne knelt beside me with the firing key still in her hand. "Can you feel your fingers?" she asked. "Unfortunately, they have opinions." She laughed once, then covered her mouth because the sound had arrived too close to grief. Corbin's voice came over the field radio from command. "Status of the lodge." Adrienne looked downhill at the rescued crew. She took the radio from Mason. "Empty," she said. "The lodge was empty." "That is not what I asked. It is the only status that matters." She opened the emergency broadcast channel and released the N7 voice log to every local recorder. Corbin's order played across the mountain. "Keep the raw panel off the presentation feed." Then Adrienne spoke. "Voss Summit's warning system was altered before opening. The closure remains in force. Preserve every record. The board chair has no operational authority. Corbin tried to interrupt. Mason cut his channel. The final rescue vehicle carried us down after sunset. N7 rested between Adrienne and me on the bench, its red casing scratched again, its black tape half loose. She did not reach for it. Neither did I. For the first time that day, the beacon belonged only to the evidence it had kept and the people it had helped us find. My shoulder went back into place at the county clinic, with less drama than our engagement ended. That happened 3 days later in a consultation room with one narrow window, 2 untouched coffees, and no cameras. Adrienne had 6 stitches at her temple. I wore a sling. Between us sat the red N7 beacon inside an evidence bag. Corbin resigned from the board this morning, she said, voluntarily, in the sense that the remaining directors offered him one door. Mason had given investigators the vendor messages, the threshold summary he approved, and the recording from the beacon. The lender had frozen the expansion note rather than accelerate it once the suppressed alerts became public. That saved the company from immediate collapse. It did not save the expansion, the lodge, or Corbin's defense. Ben recovered without permanent injury. Ruth needed surgery and made Tessa promise not to describe the hardware as decorative. The other 7 workers went home to families who had spent a day hearing corporate statements use the word accounted for before anyone could say safe. Adrienne folded her hands on the table. I enabled him, she said. Corbin used the token, but I gave him authority because I wanted the opening problem solved without another argument. You wanted me to be wrong. Yes. The answer hurt. It also left nowhere for resentment to hide behind interpretation. I wanted the system to make you wrong, she continued. Then I could open the resort, keep the financing, and still believe I had respected your judgment because software overruled it instead of me. I looked at the evidence bag. That sounds worse when you say it clearly. Most true things do. Silence settled between us. We had been together 4 years and engaged for 11 months. We knew how the other took coffee, how each of us slept after a bad call, which groceries we bought twice because neither trusted the other to remember. None of that answered what came next. Adrienne removed the engagement ring from her finger. She did not place it on the beacon. She set it beside her own coffee. I used our relationship as evidence that you would stay after I overruled you, she said. I won't do that again. What are you asking? To end the engagement. The directness took my breath more efficiently than the tunnel air had. Is that what you want? It's what accountability requires. Want is more complicated. I understood. That did not make it painless. All right, I said. Her eyes shone, but she did not look away. All right, she repeated. We ended it there. No threat, no bargain, no promise that surviving the mountain entitled us to survive each other. Then we did the work that remained. The investigation lasted 9 weeks. N7's local clock proved that 4 instability alerts existed before the automated clearance. Vendor records showed Corbin ordered the raw panel hidden from both the press feed and field display. Mason's approval of the threshold change cost him his director position and rescue certification pending review. His decision to preserve the records and help at the gallery counted in his favor, but it did not erase the choice that put him there. Adrienne testified first. She did not describe herself as deceived. She described the authority she delegated, the warnings she discounted, and the public replacement she used to force an opening decision. When counsel asked whether Nolan Pierce had been insubordinate, she said, "He was correct in a manner I had made professionally inconvenient." Tessa framed that sentence and sent it to me without comment. The old expansion plan died. Voss Summit sold 2 development parcels, abandoned the luxury lodge replacement, and funded worker medical costs before making any lender distribution. Corbin called that emotional management in one final board letter. No one answered him. The board appointed an outside monitor and published the incident timeline in the employee hall. Eli added one handwritten line beneath the printed findings. 9 entered tunnel 4, 9 came out. Management left it there. Ruth returned on crutches for the first worker vote and rejected 3 different chairs before choosing the least comfortable one. The resort did not reopen that winter. Instead, Adrienne proposed an independent mountain safety charter. Closure decisions would belong to a 3-part authority: field rescue, worker safety, and executive operations. Anyone could close terrain. Reopening required all 3. Raw sensor data would remain visible to every group and archived locally outside the company network. Employees received 2 elected seats on the operating board. Adrienne kept her chief executive role, but lost the power to appoint or dismiss the rescue authority. She voted for the restriction herself. I did not return as her employee. Tessa and I formed a regional rescue cooperative with contracts across 4 mountains. Voss Summit became one client among them. My reports went to the Independent Safety Board. Adrienne could read them at the same time as everyone else and could not change a comma. She hated the comma rule. That was how I knew it was working. For 3 months, our contact stayed inside scheduled reviews. She asked precise questions. I answered them. If she disagreed, she put the disagreement in the record instead of turning it into an instruction. Then, one evening after a meeting, she stood beside my truck holding 2 paper cups. "This is not a reporting conversation," she said. "You brought forms, coffee, risky." I had it independently reviewed. I took 1 cup. We talked for 40 minutes about everything except the mountain. The next week, we did it again. There was no dramatic forgiveness because forgiveness was not a door we could walk through once. It was a series of small moments in which neither of us used old leverage. The following December, Voss Summit opened 1 lift under the new charter. No gold banners, no lender platform, no champagne on the terrace. Workers and rescue crews gathered inside Summit Command, while Tessa reviewed the morning plan. The warning wall showed raw readings beside its colored sectors. Paper maps sat beneath it in clear cases. N7 hung on the common emergency rack. The casing was still scratched. The black tape had been replaced, badly, by Mason during his supervised return to training. My call sign had been removed. The beacon could be assigned to whoever the field group chose. Adrienne stood beside the rack in a dark green winter coat, her left hand bare. "You could take it," she said. "That would defeat the point." "I thought you might say that." Outside, the first chair moved uphill with 2 patrollers aboard. Nobody applauded. The lift had done what a lift was supposed to do under conditions people had honestly measured. Adrienne looked through the glass, then back at me. "I want to ask you something without a deadline, a title, or a command structure. Ambitious. Do you want a relationship with me now?" There was no ring in her hand, no plan hidden inside the question. "Yes," I said, slowly, and not because we were engaged before. "Slowly," she agreed, "and because you can leave any meeting." "I usually do." "I have noticed." She held out her hand, not to assign equipment or take authority, just to ask. I took it. Behind us, N7 emitted the short test pulse for the common channel. Every responder in the room heard the same signal. Adrienne tilted her head toward the sound. "Are you still listening?" she asked. "Yes." We walked outside together while the lift crossed the first tower, carrying no borrowed call sign and no promise the mountain had not agreed to keep.